I only learned that I have autism 3 years ago, and it's just answered so many questions. But yeah, the thing is, I always thought, oh, it's just my choice. It's part of my personality that I tend to be open and authentic. No, it's because autistic people don't know any other way.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 281. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an incredible interview with Roderick. The word that comes to mind most for this interview is passion. Roderick is incredibly passionate about so much in life, and we have an incredible conversation with him.
Yeah, as Emma said, I think passion is a great way to describe it. And I think one of the other things that happens throughout this conversation that is really amazing is Roderick talks a lot about how his autism, his ADHD, his OCD, and all of the different sort of neurodivergence he has are actually sort of his superpower in a lot of ways. Yeah. And they're a superpower for his creative side and his creative passions. But it also really dovetailed perfectly into non-monogamy for him because he finally found people who communicated like he did. And not necessarily because they were all neurodivergent, but because they were open communicators who spoke authentically and shared who they were. And so it's a really, really amazing interview. And I'm really excited about it.
Yes. And he has been in a relationship with Jane for 5 years and talks all about that and opening their relationship as well. Roderick also is a filmmaker, artist, and writer, and is in the process of creating an incredible documentary called Open: A Journey Through Love.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool about this film, well, I mean, there's so many cool things about it.
There's a lot of cool things about it.
But there's some really cool guest stars in the film.
Yes, there are.
I happen to be in the film.
Yeah, we are in the film.
Emma happens to be in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of other people.
And also some former guests. So it's it's a great film. What we would recommend is you head over to our show notes at normalizingnon-monogamy.com or in your podcast player. And there's a link there to go to the website for the film. And on that website, there is actually about a 5-minute preview, which is really, really good.
It's amazing. And you'll notice has excerpts from this episode.
Emma is the opening voice on the preview.
I know. I was actually surprised. I started watching the preview the other day, and my voice was the first in the preview, which is pretty amazing.
It is amazing, and I think we don't want to go on too much more about it because Roderick actually talks a bit about the film towards the end of the interview and his process. But one thing we did want to encourage everybody to do is while you're on the website for the movie, or there's links again in the show notes for the Indiegogo campaign that Roderick talks about. And as we talk about later in the interview, projects like this, projects in the non-monogamy space or the sex-positive space, rarely get mainstream funding. And so Roderick has spent an inordinate amount of time and money and energy putting this together. And I think when you look at the preview, you'll see how much work goes into this. And so consider, if you can, throwing a few bucks Roderick's way towards the project. Again, none of this money goes to Emma and me or to, as best we know, anybody in the film. It goes to making the film happen.
Right.
And we want to see it happen. We're pretty excited about it.
Yes. With that, for anyone who's a premium subscriber, we're going to jump right into the interview with Roderick now. And for anyone else, we do have our announcements to go through.
We're going to keep them quick this time, for real.
Always.
We'll see. Timer starts now. Go, Emma.
For anyone not familiar with a premium subscription, all you need to do is go to our website, normalizingnon-monogamy.com, and scroll down on the homepage. You can sign up there. For as little as $2 a year, it allows you to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, you still get all the important dates in the outro.
Speaking of dates.
Yes.
If you want to go on a date with somebody, we recommend maybe you check out the Dating Your Way workshop that we are co-hosting. Well, actually, Maria's hosting it. We're just going to kind of be there hanging in the shadows. But that's tomorrow, March 30th. And we're super pumped about that. There's more information again on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. And just a reminder, community members get a $10 discount.
Yes. Also, we will be going to Southwest Love Fest. You've heard us talk about it a lot the last few weeks. April, I almost said March. It's almost the end of March. April 14th to the 16th, we will be in Tucson, Arizona, presenting a workshop at Southwest Love Fest. We would love, love, love to have you join us. We're super excited about this conference and the whole experience. So you can find out more information by using the links in the show notes. And if you sign up and use the offer code Emma, you get 10% off.
And you help support the show.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
Yes.
Because you're amazing.
Thank you in advance.
Next up, just a quick reminder that we've got our next virtual meet and greet on April 21st. More information on how to sign up over on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the events tab, and you can learn everything you could ever want to know about it and sign up.
Next up, if you're out there looking for like-minded people, we would love for you to check out our virtual community. It is full of incredible people, if we do say so ourselves. For as little as $5 a month, you get access to an online chat platform, plus a monthly Q&A, plus a men's group and a women's group, and so much more. We would love for you to check it out. Go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the community tab to sign up.
And just a quick, huge thank you. Sorry if my chair's all squeaky. It sounds like I'm in a 90-year-old rocking chair.
I don't know if it's picking that up or not.
Oh, what I was going to say is a huge thank you to the 250 to 300-ish members who are part of the community who show up every day to support one another. We love you all. Thank you. And we'd love to have you join us and join the community.
Yes.
The last thing we want to tell you about is our favorite way, Emma and I's favorite way to get tested for STIs. It also seems to be like many of your favorite way as well. The numbers don't lie, Emma.
No, they don't.
It is super fast, it is super easy, and at $129 when you use the links on our website to save yourself $10, it is super affordable to get a 10-panel test that you can then take and you can show all of the people who you might meet at the dating workshop. Well, not necessarily at the dating workshop, but as a result of the dating workshop.
After, when you put the skills you learned at the dating workshop into practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're out there dating your way, you got tested for STIs, you're grooving.
Or even if maybe you go to Southwest Love Fest.
Well, that's a good point, too.
Yeah.
So basically, everything we have is synergistic.
Yeah, of course, always.
And we want to say the word synergy as much as we can today.
Okay. Anyway,
please check out the links on our website. Again, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. You can click on the resources tab, or there are direct links in your podcast player. And the last thing you can do while you're on our website is send us an email or send us a voicemail. We would love to hear from you. If you'd like to come on the show, if you'd like to share your story, or you just have a question or feedback from us, we love to hear from all of you.
Yes. And with that, let's go and jump in and talk to Roderick. Welcome to the podcast, Roderick. We're so excited to talk to you today, and we are just so grateful that you're here.
I am as well.
Yeah. One of the things we wanted to just tell people up front about today's conversation is it's a first for us.
It is.
We've never recorded the video of us doing an interview, and this outtakes from this conversation are actually going to be part of Roderick's upcoming documentary that we're going to be in, as well as a ton of amazing humans from across the globe. And so we're just really excited to welcome you here today, Roderick. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You're I'm a podcast virgin. You're my first time doing a podcast interview. So prepared to do a lot of editing.
And we're gentle on people their first time, so don't worry about that.
Don't worry at all.
So for anybody who doesn't know Roderick or your movie or anything about what the hell we're talking about, do you mind introducing yourself, your lovely partner, and maybe just a little bit about who you are? And then we're going to dig into your story. You bet.
So, my name is Roderick Stevens. I'm a filmmaker and artist and writer, and basically, I have autism and ADHD and OCD, and I'm hyper. So, I do a lot of different things. One of my favorite recent things was I also do video production, of course, cinematography and producing and all kinds of stuff. And I did a video for a health organization that my lovey face worked for. And at one point when her boss asked her, what does Roderick do for a living anyway? She said, whatever the fuck he wants. And so that's kind of my job.
That sums it up.
Yeah, I've spent years exploring various creative endeavors, and now that it's sort of later in life and I'm much more chill, I just do a little bit of each one. So that's kind of me.
The ultimate freedom. I have mad respect for that.
Yeah, it's taken me a lot of years to learn to be grateful for all the experiences that I've had. It's real easy when you have lofty goals and such to only see what you haven't accomplished. And I have to admit, I've lived a very interesting life, and it's just taken me a long time to recognize that. So,
well, I'm excited to dig in and learn about it. Maybe why we're here, right? We're talking about relationships and theoretically non-monogamy at some point. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your relationship dynamic? And also, we know you're here by yourself, so maybe just letting us know that you've got consent from everybody to be here. We know it's true, but let's let everybody know.
Absolutely. So I do have consent, though we're not married. We do have matching not married rings.
Got it.
We've been together for 5 years. I don't like calling her my girlfriend because it just sounds kind of lame and it's just not as passionate as I feel. And I don't like saying partner because that sounds cold and detached. So we recently concluded that I refer to her as my prom date and she refers to me as her probation officer. So that's where we're going with it.
I'm curious how those two came to be, because I think that's an approach we haven't heard before, and I love it.
Well, the prom date thing was somebody had posted on Twitter. Somebody, one of the polyamory people or groups or something that I follow on Twitter had posted different alternatives for names to call your loved ones. And I liked prom date. So I just happened to pick that one. I have no idea why she calls me her probation officer. It was just she said, prom date. Okay. Well, I'm going to call you my probation officer. So that's our thing. And
I love it.
We've been together for 5 years, 5 of the happiest years either of us have ever experienced. We've both had, I've been married once before and been in some other long-term relationships. She's been married 3 times before. She'll be a little embarrassed that I mentioned that, but she gets it now. And we, like a lot of people. So first of all, sex has always been really a cornerstone of our relationship. I mean, to put it bluntly, we got together for sex and then accidentally fell in love. That wasn't the intention originally. And so sex has always been a really important part of our dynamic. And so early on, of course, we talked fantasy talk and pillow talk and other people and so on, but it wasn't something either of us took seriously and certainly wasn't something we were ready for. And then a couple of years ago, I was on a road trip. I do a lot of driving for not even one of my jobs, like 3 of my jobs. I do, work that I do, video production, art shows, etc. I do a lot of traveling, and I was on a long road trip and was never I'd never listened to podcasts. I didn't really know what they were. And she convinced me she loved podcasts, and she said, you should listen to some podcasts. And I stumbled upon these lifestyle podcasts, and I'd heard the word, had some sense of it, but really didn't know much about the lifestyle or anything. And this particular one, which you guys, of course, are familiar with, We Got a Thing. Mm-hmm. Here I was listening to a longtime married couple talk about their experience opening up their marriage. And, in between these sexy stories were tales of personal growth and improving intimacy and so on. And I ended up listening to all 7 years of their podcast and their relationship in 7 days. And
wow, that's quite the commitment.
Yep. That's one of those things where the autism and the OCD comes into play. So I just listened to hours and hours of this podcast. And I don't know if this will make sense to a lot of people, but when you're hearing such a lengthy experience, but compressed in such a short time, it gives you a really acute overview of how things changed. And for me, again, autism kind of plays a role in this, because everything that I observe and experience tends to be kind of broken down into its components for me. I'm very much into the inner workings of everything I encounter. And it literally was like looking at mathematical blueprints, how this lifestyle experience was impacting their self-esteem, their communication, obviously compassion. It was just incredible, and I was hooked. By the time I came home, I told my prom date, I said, this whole sex with other people thing sounds titillating and all, but we absolutely must not settle for anything less than the kind of relationship that I keep hearing about, because that was just the first of several podcasts I listened to. And it became so obvious to me how these things could change relationships. And for me, I recognized it was what I'd been looking for all of my adult life. One of the things with autism, with my experience with autism, is that my incoming and outgoing filters don't work, let's say, the common way. And so the outgoing means I'm Mr. TMI. Like I have a hard time gauging, oh, you didn't want to know about my bowel movements? And, and so I tend to just spill everything. I'm an open book. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And I've always been kind of bummed that most people don't interact that way. Everybody's always very guarded and protective, and I don't even know how to do that. And so as we started, meeting people in this community, that was the thing that stood out the most, was this is an entire population of people that are much more prone to authenticity, to being very open and real and vulnerable. You can meet someone in the lifestyle community, and within 5 minutes, you're talking about very personal, vulnerable issues. And that just is like heroin to me. I mean, not that I've done heroin, but it's very intoxicating. I just people connecting in that way. And so we talked about it. I was immersed in these podcasts. So I literally was experiencing the lifestyle in a way. So I was getting over all of those nerves that so many people have when you're first introduced to this stuff, where she was only listening to a few episodes here and there. So she, I literally had to just say, do you trust me? And she did. She knew that I wouldn't try to manipulate her. She knew that I wasn't like, trying to convince her this would be good for us just so I could go get a double blowjob. And, I'm
going to interrupt you for just a second. Yeah. I want you to continue that story, but I want to say, so first of all, when you refer to the lifestyle, most listeners should know what we're referring to, but in case they don't, it's mostly the swinging lifestyle. That's what you're referring to. So more casual hookups in that type of culture, I guess. And then the other thing is, I want you to continue talking about your current relationship and how that has worked for you. But jumping back, you had mentioned like throughout your life, this was the type of thing you were looking for. And so it sounds like my assumption then is like you had no other understanding until the last 5 years or the last few years of alternative style types of relationships. Like you were trying to fit yourself into the monogamous culture. Is that correct?
Well, basically what I mean by that is specifically the authenticity. When it comes to relationships, the biggest difference between the relationship I have that I have now and those in the past, one of the biggest differences was that I always felt like sex and intimacy between these two people that are in a relationship, shouldn't it be like completely comfortable and sort of open, not in what we call open relationships way. I wasn't even thinking about that, but just shouldn't we be able to talk about anything and be able to share fantasies and be able to be erotic sometimes and laugh sometimes and have, just a quickie sometimes. I just always felt like, shouldn't it just be anything that we're both comfortable with? And I always felt like I had to keep a certain amount of my sexuality, kind kind of hidden because people were uncomfortable with it. And when I got together with my current prom date, as I said, she had the same kind of openness and the same kind of let's just explore together. As an example, one of the biggest lessons I've learned since getting into this community is that I make no projections about who I'm going to be 6 months from now or what I'm going to want or what I'm going to like, because I'd rather just wait and find out and just sort of let things evolve. So as an example, I consider myself straight, but how do I know what I might enjoy if there's another man involved? So, for instance, I have my ideas. I mean, I think, I don't think I'll like that, but it's like, well, what's it going to hurt to try it? I mean, I'm not going to try anything that involves pain because I have no pain threshold, but so like on our dating profiles, for instance, when I changed my listing to either open-minded, which would be kind of my favorite way, or, bi-curious or bi-comfortable or something like that, it was amazing to me how many single men and couples started reaching out to us who were similarly bi-curious or whatever, but listed as straight, because there's this stigma, this, tension in there. And that's something I'd love to see, diminished at the very least. And, but along those lines, I've just sort of adopted a very flexible, we'll see how it goes, we'll see what happens. And I just always felt like my past relationships were kind of locked down to, I dated a woman for a while who, for instance, only wanted to have sex in the missionary position because anything else felt disrespectful. And, so now that's her feeling, that's her experience. Nobody can change that for her. So I respected that. But I was like, but I want to be in a relationship where we're just comfortable trying things. And, and so that became a huge thing. But the authenticity was the thing I was referring to, that I realized, oh my God, I've been looking for this all my life, for people to just be more real with me.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and it sounds like because that's how you just show up naturally. And it's almost been like this imbalanced relationship between you and everybody you've ever interacted with, where you're like, look at me, I'm authentic. And they're like a little bit guarded, and you're like, damn it, why can't I ever get matched in this authenticity?
Yeah. And it, I only learned that I have autism 3 years ago, and it's just answered so many questions. But yeah, the thing is, I always thought, it's just my choice. It's part of my personality that I tend to be open and authentic. No, it's because autistic people don't know any other way. I realized, no, that's exactly right. That's the point. Gosh, I've spent so much of my adult life avoiding social situations because I don't know how to just make small talk or network, or, I just know how to meet someone and immediately start, delving into life stories. A perfect example of something that has symbolized a change for me is, again, as I've said, I've traveled all over the country for years and years in various ventures, and been offered repeatedly lodging at people's homes. They say, you can stay at our house. And I never do it. I need my own space. I'd rather be by myself. Both of us, my girlfriend and I are quite introverted in spite of my, verbiosity. And, so I tend to always avoid staying at other people's houses. I'd rather be in my own space. Well, we, this past November, spent a week at Desire in Cancun and met bunches of lovely people from the We Got a Thing community. It was the first time for us meeting a lot of them in person, and, struck up some great friendships. And so one of the couples, when I mentioned I was about to head back east to do this 5,500 mile tour of the Southeast U.S., including where I met Jim and Pam. So I was going through their city, and they said, you're welcome to come stay at our house. And they didn't even finish the sentence. And I was like, absolutely. I had no problem, because I knew we connect on such a different level. And these aren't people we've had sex with. I mean, this is just personal connections. And I mean, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, and you guys can edit how you see fit, but
no, I love it. And I think you answered my question about like what your relationships were like in the past. But you have learned, what I'm gathering is you've learned so much about yourself, especially even in the last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And so it sounds, I'm putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's been in a lot of ways a huge relief. And also just like, oh my gosh, where was like all of these things that didn't make sense in my life for so long? Like I knew something wasn't clicking, but didn't sound like you could put the finger on, like relationships weren't quite what you wanted. And like, you're trying to figure it out, and it's, it sounds like you're starting to put together those pieces, and that's amazing. And I just wanted to say thank you for sharing.
No, and I love it. I mean, gosh, one of my favorite stories, of course, is Jim and Pam, and the idea of these people that so late in life discover these things about themselves that are really deep, meaningful things that feel liberating and freeing. Oh, it's just amazing. And I'll tell you, when I did that, so I spent 2 weeks driving all over the Southeast U.S. And again, I know I'm jumping forward because I haven't even talked about it. But
we'll come back.
Yeah. So I drove 5,500 miles, went to Orlando, Tampa, North Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, for 2 weeks, interviewing therapists, podcasters, couples, individuals, Naughty Jim. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Scott and April of Naughty Jim, interviewing all these people. And every night, Jane would have to put up with an hour to an hour and a half of me just gushing about these people. And it was this double whammy of, as a producer, I knew I was just getting all this great content for the documentary. But as a person, just all these amazing personal connections and conversations, these deep conversations. I mean, I was like high, and I don't do drugs, and I was just high. And to where by the end of that 2 weeks, I was exhausted, and I actually came down from it. Like I was interviewing Catherine from Expansive Connection, and about halfway through the interview, it was one of my last interviews of the run, and about halfway through the interview, just my brain went blank, and I just sat there looking at her. And fortunately, she has a lot of enthusiasm, and I didn't, I could just give her little prompts, and I was just sitting there going, oh man, am I glad she knows what she's talking about, because I was like, man, I'm crashing. And sure enough, I even started to to get kind of down, but I just knew what was happening. I was like, oh well, yeah, man, you can't stay up there that without having some kind of
you hit a max there, and you got to kind of have some recovery and downtime to rejuvenate yourself.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to relate to that so much, Roderick. And really a quick programming note. Anybody who's like, who are these Pam and Jim people? If you go back and listen to episode 232, you will learn about what it means to learn that you are perhaps a pansexual, cross-dressing, swinging polyamorous at age 78, and the experiences that go along with that.
Yeah.
And also a couple who in their 60s, Pam's in her 60s, Jim's now in his mid 80s, they have sex every single morning. Every single morning. They don't miss it. It is a ritual, and their story is beautiful. So I highly recommend going and checking it out.
Just amazing couple.
But, yeah. The thing I wanted to just relate to, though, was, we've done a lot of travel around the U.S., and we have people reach out to us all the time and invite us into their homes. And often we take people up on it, and we've had these experiences where we talk to people for an hour or two, or maybe spend one evening with them and, sit around and have cocktails and a nice dinner. And you leave these experiences feeling like close friends that you've known for years and years and years. And perhaps all you've done is had dinner,
2-hour dinner,
or all you've done is some of these interviews that we've done, we've walked away from them with new friends in some part of the world that we couldn't even imagine, because the the connection that goes along with being authentically yourself,
Mm-hmm.
I think most people can very quickly see there's something here or there's not within a short period of time,
Sure.
a couple of hours or less, when you're actually being authentic and you don't have some facade up
Yep.
that people are trying to guess. Like, I don't know, was he telling the truth? Was he not telling the truth? Is there more to it? Like, no, this is it. This is me. This is all of me. And I think you can skip so many steps of friendship building, relationship building, all of those things when you show up in that way. And so that feeling of you go to somebody's house, you meet them, you talk to them for an hour, you leave, you're like best friends. Then you drive up the road and you do it again, you do it again, you do it again, you do it for like 3 weeks in a row. And you're like, Jesus, now I have like 75 new best friends. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And you're overwhelmed and exhausted.
Yeah.
And like,
and euphoric at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're like, yeah, we would need to, when that happened, we would need to definitely take some time to rest and recuperate. And we're also both introverted. And so it's like, okay, this is amazing. And yet we need some time to slow down a little bit.
Yep.
But it doesn't take away from the richness of those experiences at all.
And I think too, what it shows, I think in your story too, is that perhaps you two started off in the swinging lifestyle. That was your introduction, but
which we're going to get back to in a second.
Yeah.
Right. That the journey that's ahead is an open one for you. Where do we go? What do we do? Do we have some thoughts? Sure. But who you are in 6 months may not be who you are today. And I love that. And I would love to, circle back and say, what you show up to Jane, you're like, listen, I've listened to 700 hours of podcasts in the last week. Somehow I did that. Yeah. And trust me, like, we're going to go on this journey. And she shows up and says, okay, well, I've listened to a little bit. Let's do this. What do you two do? Like, what is the next step?
Yeah. Back a little while ago when I interrupted you, that story.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say one of the things I've been touting for years is that, to me, intimacy is vulnerability. That's the cornerstone of intimacy is being vulnerable. And so for one, providing a safe environment for other people to be vulnerable, and then trusting other people with your vulnerability. That's where intimacy comes from. And, so that's what's happening is when these people are so vulnerable, you're getting all this intimacy. Jane, who she hasn't been Miss Warm and Fuzzy like me. She's always, well, for one, she's English. English have a very certain, a certain kind of culture that keeps things a little bit at a distance and a little bit, cooled off. And then she got with me and I've ruined her. And so when I first approached her about, listen, I literally spent a few weeks. I make it sound like I spent a week listening to this podcast and then went home and talked to her. I listened to several. And one of the other things I want to mention that grabbed me was these incredible friendships that people were developing with other couples and people. I spent a few weeks literally writing notes, distilling everything that I was learning about the lifestyle community and the kind of impact that it would have and why exactly and where's this coming from and what do we need to work on, because that's one of the things that you hear about, like in your podcast all the time, is you can't just go into this willy-nilly. I mean, your relationship needs to be in a certain place. You as individuals need to be in a certain place. And if you're not, you need to be working on getting there, or else, things can go south. And I recognized all of that. So what I went to her with was, don't worry about sex with other people. That either happens or it doesn't happen. That's not what I'm focused on here. I'm focused on, we need to be able to talk about anything and really get into how we feel about things and etc. And that was new. That was new territory for her in a big way, and including even just like self-reflection and inner growth. That's stuff she's never, self-awareness, all of that stuff. Like she's just sort of lived life, letting life happen the way most people do. And here I was, she'd already spent enough time with me to see that I'm always in a mode of, I noticed I feel this way and I think it's attached to this and, and all that. So she was used to that with me. But here I was telling her, we need to start working on you learning to really address how are you feeling and then learn how to express that to me. And I'm going to keep working on making sure I'm providing a safe and patient and compassionate place for you to share that, etc. So I said, that's what we're focused on, because she was quite insecure about the idea of us, being intimate with other people. Gosh, when we would talk fantasy talk, it was always very cold, transactional. If we ever started to talk about the idea of something taking place, it was like, well, maybe we can hire a prostitute, because she didn't want any connection with people. Mm-hmm. And, after a while, I started telling her, you want connections with people. You just don't know it yet because you can't hear that over the insecurities you're struggling with. Don't worry about it. That's not where, we're not aiming to sleep with people. We're aiming to improve our relationship. And
just a quick question. How far into your relationship was this when you brought this up to her?
This would be about 3.5 years in. Because it was about 1.5 years ago, and we're almost at 5 years. Now, we had already booked a trip to, we booked a trip to Hilo in Jamaica because we're both comfortable with nudity. I mean, not that we'd had much experience, but she has a bit of an exhibitionist streak, and I'm just me. So I'm like, yeah, sure, man, whatever. I'll take my clothes off. And so we were like, if we're going to, and we'd heard of Desire and we'd heard all these places, but it seemed like Hilo was if you're going to dip your toe in, just dive in. And so we thought, all right, we'll go to Hilo. And again, by then I'd been listening to some podcasts, so I already knew it was a safe place to go. I didn't feel scared to go there. Well, then 30 days before we were supposed to go, the CDC elevated Jamaica to very high risk because this was during COVID. And, we knew we were already multiply jabbed and all that, but we knew if we went down there and then ended up having to quarantine, her employers would not be thrilled when, the CDC had given us a heads up. So I had a few hours to redirect us, found a takeover group that was going to Desire RM in Cancun, and I booked with them. And so we got down there and spent a week. And I always say it's important to emphasize this was not our tribe. This was not a group of people we really would have connected with in any other way. And we had an amazing week full of just incredible conversations with lovely people. And that trip was what started to Jane, like I said, Jane already trusted me. She knew I wasn't, that she could go along with me as long as I kept reassuring her, we're not hurrying to do anything. But it was that week in Cancun, one of the things we always rave about is how immediately we saw all these different sizes and shapes of people just unashamedly celebrating their humanness. And you're like, you don't get this in what people call the vanilla world. There's just so much facade and judgment and insecurities. And here are everyone's gorgeous, I mean, it's just amazing. And everyone's so supportive of each other. So that trip was what really started to shift the thinking for her, so much so that a week after we got back, she's the one that signed us up for the We Got a Thing community. And, nice. And by that time we had already booked. So like when I changed us to the Desire RM trip, at the same time, I went ahead and booked the following year's Desire Pearl trip with the We Got a Thing community, which is the one that we just went to in November then. And, all during that week, that first week in Cancun, I kept telling people, yeah, we've already booked for next year. And I would reassure Jane, it's refundable if we don't want to go. Because we were still, by the third day, she was like, oh, hell, we're going. And so, so that was the beginning of the transition for her. I think another important component of it was, again, she kept kind of understandably expressing anxiety about the idea of playing with other people. And my two big things were, you don't have to worry about that because that's not what's happening right now. That doesn't exist. And I would say the only way that's ever going to happen is if we both want it to. So if you don't want it to, it's not going to happen. So you don't have anything to worry about. And number two, one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize when they're imagining these scenarios, if you're imagining, if you're still in those early stages of learning about this stuff, and you imagine your partner with someone else and you're feeling insecure, the majority of the time, that's because you're imagining a phantom. You're just imagining this person, and whatever that person is going to be everything you're not. They're going to be, everything that you're afraid of. And I would tell her, this is all going to change when you start meeting real people and you start engaging. And, one of the most important factors is if you meet another couple and you see they're just as in love with each other as we are, and you now have a relationship with her, and you're completely secure in the notion that she's not trying to take me from you, and it makes all the difference. And, we talk about that. I mean, we definitely took our time. Like in fact, to be clear, the first time we ever even played with a couple was in November at Desire.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple of months ago. And here, I've been working on this documentary for months. A little side note, one of the things I keep saying is puts me in kind of a unique position for doing this documentary is that, one, we're in the E&M community. We're not someone from the outside trying to report on it, but at the same time, we're newbies. So I've got all that wide-eyed wonder where I can ask questions and learn new things, and I still have my precious naivete. So
I love it, Roderick. And there's a couple of things that you said in there that I wanted to I wanted to pull out and highlight. So the first was the concept that your sort of approach to this was, I want authenticity, and authenticity will create intimacy, and perhaps a byproduct of that might be connections with other people. It's not your goal. I mean, are you thinking that'd be hella fun? Sure. But it is not this mission, which I think is something that often happens when people, when they approach this, they are mission focused.
Yep.
Right. And which you were mission focused, but your mission was a different mission. Your mission was, I want to improve my relationship. I want to improve intimacy, and I want to improve connection with my partner. And perhaps that opens a door to a different world that we have not been a part of. So I think that was just a really, really critical piece in there. And there was another thing that you said that I think was so important, which was you talked about, I wanted to help, or I wanted her to feel more comfortable being authentic, sharing from this open place. And that is something that people often share, and they leave off the second half that you didn't leave off, which is, I needed to make sure I was creating an environment where she felt that she could do that. Because often people will approach this and say, well, Emma, you just need to be more open. You need to share your feelings. You need to be more authentic. And it's like,
but that puts the ownership all on that one other person.
Yeah, but you can't have that without at least two of us.
Yeah.
And that means we both have to show up different.
Yeah.
And so I thought those were two critical pieces that I did not want to get lost in your sort of beautiful origin story. So thank you for those.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest things I feel I've learned that's made me a better partner is more patience, just more patience, because I've come to recognize, and more than recognize, appreciate that, for one, no matter where we're at with things, we're every minute is different. Like, there's so many people that get hung up on, well, you were okay with this last week, whatever it is, and it's like that's not how life works. It's every day is not some contract that that you're now obligated to. So to me, it's been super important to always be presenting that, hey, whatever we're okay with right now is what we're okay with right now, and that there's no guarantee of that next week. And a smaller version of that whole approach with focusing on our relationship and not sex with other people is between the documentary and then just our own personal exploration, we've gone to several different resorts now. We've gone to house parties. We've gone to all that. Every single one of them, not one of them have we ever gone to aiming to have sex with anybody. We've had it a few times, but every time it's like, no, we're going there to have our own fun. And whatever comes of it.
The framing of the expectations, right?
Well,
and not having a scarcity mindset.
Yeah. And it's huge. And this is a thing that we hear from people. We get emails like this, where it's, we're thinking about going, but like, what if the people aren't our people? What if we're not attracted to anybody? We don't want to go and spend $5,000. And it's like, then first of all, yeah, that's a shit ton of money. Yes. We understand that like there's an immense amount of privilege that goes into that. But if you go on that trip thinking about, I'm going on an amazing trip with my partner, my prom date, my whoever, and I don't care what happens there other than I want to leave having a better relationship with my partner. None of the other people fucking matter. They don't matter one damn bit.
Yep.
You will inevitably meet amazing people, but they may not be your stereotypical people. But I mean,
that's for any scenario, not even just a big trip, even just like a meet and greet or any type of community event like that. You can just find open-minded people that are discussing open relationships and, all the way to, a bigger multi-day trip like that.
Yeah. I also love, Roderick, the notion that you are who you are now. And I was having a conversation over text with a friend the other day, and they sent me an Alan Watts quote that I to paraphrase is, you're under no obligation to be the person let me try again here. You're under no obligation in 5 minutes to be the person you are right now.
Yeah.
Is basically the point that you could change completely who you are between now and 5 minutes from now. And there's no one to tell you that that's not who you are.
We all have permission to change our mind and to learn and to grow. And, changing our mind is one of those big social hurdles that so many people, get stuck on. I'm not allowed to change my mind, Another big, I'm a fan of the 4 agreements. And to me, one of the most important ones is take nothing personally. And the way I expand on that is I'm always saying nothing that anyone else ever says or does is about you. Even if it's, I don't like your hair. That's not about you. That's about who they are, what gender they are, where they were raised, what their parents were like, whether they're colorblind, what religion they grew. All of that stuff is what informs people's opinions, because if it was about your hair, everyone in the world would have the same opinion about your hair. I mean, that's the proof in it. I'm an artist, and I used to travel around the country doing art shows all the time. And I would have some people come into my booth and say it was the best art they'd ever seen. And I'd other people come in my booth that didn't know I could hear them. And they'd be like, why would anybody buy that? What is that supposed to be? Or whatever. And I never took it personally, because I was like, man, everybody's got their own tastes. That's not about me. That's nothing to do with me. It's not even about my art. It's literally about them. And when you can learn to detach from that and say, because obviously the whole thing is every relationship would benefit from the things that ethical non-monogamy forces you to deal with. That's the only thing. Everyone would benefit from them. You don't have to be in the lifestyle to benefit from these things. And those things are, or include things like addressing the fact that you feel insecure because what if people don't like me? What if people think I'm ugly, etc.? Well, you have to deal with that, or else it's not going to go anywhere. So that means you have to learn to recognize everyone has their own tastes. That's nothing personal. You have your own tastes. You have what you like and don't like. And you find that most people aren't as picky and judgmental as we think there are. They tend to be just as obsessed with worrying about other people liking them. And I think one of the things I'm most enthralled with in the E&M community is how much people support each other and compliment each other and express love and affection and appreciation for each other. And when we were at Desire that first year, one of the examples of how these things have impacted me is by like the fourth night, they were doing their entertainment out in the little courtyard. And as usual, we were off on one of the little canopy beds off to the side because, we tend to huddle in our own little corner a lot of the time. And we were off to the side and there was a live band playing and there's all these couples just dancing. And I just started weeping. And Jane was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I can't handle any more joy right now." Like I literally just felt like overwhelmed with just this affection for humanity. And, that's not everybody's going to have this extreme cartoonish reaction that I have, but it's just amazing the way people treat each other in these communities. I have some pretty strong political beliefs, and there are individuals that I know their political beliefs are very different than mine. And in any other context, I would have a really hard time with my concerns about how they feel about their fellow humans. And yet within this context, I can't wait to see the guy. There's a guy I'm thinking of in particular, and I just got to see him this last weekend as part of a group gathering, and I couldn't wait to see him. And that to me is an important experience for me because it helps me to. One of the things with autism is that my brain has a tendency to polarize everything. Everything is binary. It's on or off. And of course, nothing in life is on or off. So that can benefit me at times because if the switch flips on about something, I'm oblivious to any other option. It's like, nope, everything's going great because that's all I know. It's literally the reason I can paint and write and make films and so on and so forth is because certain switches are switched on, and I see a vision and I don't know any other way. But it can be a real struggle when there are things I'm uncomfortable with, or that I don't know, or I don't like, or I don't understand. And so having that dichotomy of someone whose beliefs I might disagree with in other arenas, and then having an affection for that same person within this arena it's an important experience for me to have, to help me to remember not to judge so black and white,
Mm-hmm.
And
you're connecting on the human level.
I was exactly going to say it humanizes people. And I think that again, not that you have to go to a nudist resort or to a sex resort to experience this, but there is something powerful about everybody is stripped down to themselves.
Yep.
They're not showing up with all their fancy clothes and their bags and their whatevers. They're butt-ass naked, just like you.
Yep.
Maybe you got an underwear on or whatever, but you're pretty much you.
Yep.
And there's not much more of a vulnerable way to show up. And you start to realize that the billionaire looks just like everybody else when they get naked. And I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. And
then you start to connect on a human level. And you might find out a week into your relationship, getting to know somebody, that they voted for the quote unquote wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
But you know them on a different level.
Yep.
And there's something to that. And I appreciate that.
It's I would say plenty of people postulate that there is no more sensitive, vulnerable, precarious, stressful topic for us as humans than sex and sexuality. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you can break through that one thing, all the rest of it becomes so much easier to deal with. And, one example of that would be, I don't know, I mean, almost every man I know that I've met or had any kind of interaction with in the lifestyle community is quite open about their struggles with erections and performance issues. It's like a common thing. Everybody knows about it. Everybody knows it's a thing, and that we're all just doing our best to deal with it and so on. Whereas, out in the rest of the world, oh no, I don't have any trouble. No, man, I don't know. No. And and when they do, they do have those difficulties, but everybody feels ashamed of their flaws. And it just feels like in the E&M community, everybody accepts no, flaws are just part of being human. There is no right or wrong about it. And this is just how it goes, and the fact that, again, you can meet a group of men, and within 5 minutes, you're all sharing, well, here's what I do about my performance anxiety or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in the real world, quote unquote, real world, the way you combat that is you get a bigger pair of truck nuts.
Yeah, that's right.
For your giant ass truck.
Bigger flag. And
bigger flag, bigger truck nuts, bigger tires, and your ED goes away.
Louder mufflers. No, yeah. And the Jane's experience with the female side of that, you could say, is how she went, and during this trip to Desire, they did all the ladies got together and did this exchange of all their lingerie that they didn't want anymore. So everybody was getting, or bikinis or whatever, their big Shine orders. Mm-hmm. And she really experienced in there this community of women that are so supportive of each other. And you just don't find that outside of the E&M community. There's much more like competition and almost rivalry between people of the same gender, seemingly especially with women. And you get into this E&M community and everybody's so supportive of each other and encouraging. And it's just amazing.
I love it too. And I just, as you were talking, I was thinking about today in this conversation, we've talked a lot about the swinging lifestyle and because that's been your experience. But you keep referencing the E&M community, and the ethical non-monogamy community is there's so much bigger than swinging. Not like there's anything wrong with swinging whatsoever. People find their tribe there. People also find their tribe in other sex positive communities out there. And so much of what you've been sharing and discussing today can be applied in all of those different situations, and in monogamous life, monogamous life.
Absolutely.
Yes. You don't have to be non-monogamous to talk about sex.
Absolutely.
Not at all.
Yep.
So, in any type of just if we could all, think about relationships a little bit differently, get back to that authenticity and vulnerability, and it doesn't matter what your relationship structure is. But to connect at that human level can be so powerful.
Yeah, to be clear, our relationship just exploded by leaps and bounds in all new directions long before we got anywhere close to being physical with someone. I kept telling her last year when we were at Desire, no, this is it. We're in the lifestyle because we're just experiencing these things and we're talking to people. We're exposing ourselves to these new things and these vulnerabilities. This is it. We're in the. She had gotten nervous because, for instance, she overheard a couple when we were down there that were talking about how we just spent 2 hours hanging out with this couple over at the hot tub before we found out they're not even swingers. And they felt like they'd lost 2 hours, and that scared the heck out of her, And I was like, there's it's still full of humans, so there's still going to be all these different varieties of people. But no, that's not anything we need to worry about. And
people have different wants and desires and needs and things they're looking for, and they can do that.
But. And that's the perfect. I mean, that's what we talked about maybe 15 minutes ago. Those are the people who are like, I want my money back from my shitty trip to Desire because they showed up. Their mission was probably to fuck people.
Yep.
And fuck people that weren't their partner. And that's a fine mission to have.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. It's a fine mission to have.
But you have to accept the consequences of that, And
it's going to skew all of your interactions that week where instead of I'm going to talk to these people, I'm going to talk to those people, I'm going to talk to those, I'm going to talk to the bartender, I'm going to talk to the woman who makes the omelets. I'm going to talk to everybody because I'm going to be authentically me in all of my connections. And then that's who I'm going to show up as. And that's going to attract people to me who should be around me.
Yep. I keep saying, especially working on the documentary, which I keep dabbling on but haven't introduced
We're going
yet.
to talk about in a second.
Yep. But I keep saying, I, for instance, can't relate to what I call DTF swingers, just people that don't even want to know your name. They just want to hook up. And, I can't relate to that because I, even before we started in exploring this stuff, I already knew I have to have a personal connection. I tried a one-night stand once in my life, and I was like, I don't get it. Really? That just did nothing for me. But I applaud people that enjoy that life. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, great, cool. So I think it's awesome. Polyamory sounds exhausting to me, especially because I'm such an intense person. I'm like, how could I be me with more than, that just sounds exhausting. But wow, do I get giddy when I meet people that are enjoying that. And I love hearing the stories of people just like us that had no intention of going down that path and stumbled into it. I'm like, oh yeah, it would not shock me at all if that happened to us. But it won't shock me if it doesn't. It's just whatever happens, happens. And just letting it be. And one of the things I've loved in interviewing several like authors and therapists is making sure that we are clear that there's no forward scale that goes from swinging to polyamory or nope. Everybody's got their own flavor of what appeals to them and what they're comfortable with. And there is no evolving from one to the other. You just, you're going to be who you are for now and enjoy what you enjoy. And, and like I said, after a while, Jane did start to really recognize, and now she just loves it. She just loves meeting these new people. One of the things I keep mentioning is, again, we just played with a couple for the first time during a week in Mexico, and that play date isn't even one of the highlights. I mean, nothing wrong with that. We adore the people. It's just, oh yeah, we had sex. We already are like, we have amazing sex. How's anybody else going to improve on that? So it was about the amazing connections and conversations. And that was the stuff that, we laugh because we often go to these events and have less sex than usual. Because for one, we're exhausted. And for two, we're so satiated. We're so just satisfied from all the incredible interactions. And one of the things I think that we're observing, you guys would probably know more than I at this point, is for one, especially during COVID, there was this explosion of the swinging community. But even aside from that, over the last 10 years, it just seems like it's growing, and it's especially growing in that sort of middle territory of what a lot of people call social swingers. Some people say swally, etc. But just people that they enjoy sex with other people, but they also really enjoy the connections, the friendships, and the personal stuff. Just not necessarily to the point of let's move in together. And
right.
And it's been disappointing. Two things that have been disappointing to me that I would love to see change and that I think are changing are one, the tension, and I maybe already mentioned this, but the tension between the E&M community or the lifestyle community and the LGBTQ plus community, as far as especially when it comes to men, and again, being bisexual or bi-curious or whatever. It's like, wait, that's like, we're right next door to each other. There's no reason there should be any tension there. And then the other one is the tension between swinging and polyamory. Same thing. I'm like, guys, we're all of us. It disappoints me that all of us in this community, or so many of us, are almost forced to be anonymous because of risks to life, jobs and all that kind of stuff. And then within that, you're going to make other people hide another part of themselves. It's like, no, we need all the support we can get. We should all be working together to normalize all of this stuff and not make it something we have to hide. Whether you're in a polyamorous relationship or you're just a swinger, it shouldn't matter. Again, they're just different flavors, and we should be supporting each other. So I'd like to think that's starting to ease up a little.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we've witnessed as we did this was we've started to uncover the fact that those lines are much blurrier than we ever thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking the swinging versus poly line.
Yep.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and this could be a 7-hour show on its own, is that topic and the sort of, it's not even sort of, the bi men, particularly in the lifestyle,
In the swinging
lifestyle, get very, like, you don't, like, for you, I was actually going to comment earlier when you said, like, you changed your profile to say open or bi curious. Like, that's a huge step. And I loved hearing, and it shouldn't be.
And it
right?
shouldn't
like,
be.
First
That's
of all,
the thing.
it shouldn't be. Like, that's fucking stupid that it had to be. But
I almost did it out of spite. You know, I was like,
I love it.
Changing my thing to open-minded. Yeah.
Well, and what you said came out of that was really telling, which is you then got contacted by a whole bunch of people who said we're straight on their profile, but that's not really the full story. And I think that is, first of all, sad, and it sucks, right? And second of all, I know in talking to a handful of people in this community, the larger community at whole, that is some of the grievances that the polyamorous community lays out against the swinging community. Is often that is not welcome and accepted.
Right.
Whereas some of the parties that we've seen hosted, that are maybe hosted by people who are more polyamorous, or they're just more open relationship, open relating, their parties are not swinger parties, they're more sex parties. And the people who show up to these are much more in the queer community, the trans, non-binary, bi men, pansexual, and they're much more welcome into these spaces versus, well, if you're a bi guy who shows up at Desire to do something openly bisexual, in quotes, right, you're going to probably have a pretty strong reaction around you.
Or you're risking a strong reaction.
You're risking it, certainly. Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel very fortunate that that we just happen to come into this via a generally safe community, which is the We Gotta Think community. They do tend to be more accepting and open to these sort of things. And that specific discussion is part of what prompted me to create this poll that I put out last year, that I'm still trying to get more responses from. One of the main things I wanted to see, one of the things I ask in there is, how do you identify? And I put straight, bi-comfortable, bi-curious, bisexual, homosexual, pansexual, and I know there's more. I remember you guys kind of helped me do some structuring of that poll. And one of the things I wanted to see, which has sure enough come about, is a solid 40% of men identify as something other than straight. You know, according to this poll. I mean, that's what they are saying. But if you were to say, look on all the dating sites, it's probably more like 15%. And it's because of this fear of, and you know, I had to consider that when we, and this will tie back to something we were talking about earlier, when we set up our dating profiles, you know, well, first of all, I am just generally straight. So, okay, well, that's what I put. And then as we started learning more and I started feeling this frustration of, well, why is that shouldn't be such a big deal. You know, I had to think about, so if I change my status to buy something, is that going to scare off, let's say, some couple that we might be interested in? And then the answer is, well, fuck them then. Like, I don't want to worry about that.
That's you putting something out there about yourself attracts the people that are you're going to attract, and doesn't attract the people that aren't going to be good fits.
The people who are 110% straight, they're probably not going to reach out to you.
Yeah.
And anything over anything over 100% straight, probably not going to reach out.
Exactly. And and at that point you have to say, well, I probably wouldn't want them to because just as an example, if of course I'm excited about the idea of having a threesome with my partner and another guy, and I don't want to worry about if we're going to bump into each other. Is he going to be? I do not want to worry about that. In fact, I have certain bucket list things I want done that he's going to have to be comfortable with a guy being in close proximity. And so, we were at an event recently, and Jane started fooling around with this guy, and it was all very in close proximity to me. And then he said something like, do I understand you're bi-comfortable? And I was like, yeah. And I wasn't super involved. I was just kind of sitting there. I still tend to get overwhelmed when these things are happening and just go, I don't know. And so he started doing some things to me. And at the time it was just, it takes me a little while to get acclimated and get comfortable enough to do things, but I was just excited that he did it. I mean, I wasn't even necessarily getting anything out of it, but I just loved that here was someone that was willing to share that with us and be himself and do something he wanted to do. I mean, it wasn't going to hurt me. So like, what's the big deal?
Well, you consented to it. Yeah.
I consented to it. He absolutely, he checked with me. And I think what I meant to say about how it ties back is, well, I forgot how that was coming back. It has to do with, again, the expectations thing and the fact that, we go into this for our own thing. And so, however things transpire, we're going to have a blast. It doesn't matter. I mean, one way or another, we're going to have a blast. So,
yeah. Yeah. One of the things you said, and we've touched on so many of them, I think, was you said even just through this journey, you have seen your relationship with Jane just blossom and grow in so many amazing ways. And I think one of the ways that I know that works for Emma and me is when we hit things that cause us to stumble, they knock us off our feet and we rebuild a little bit stronger. Are there things that you and Jane have come up against in the last couple of years that you've been doing this that have put you back on your heels or have caused you to take a pause and think, okay, this isn't just gravy train?
Mm-hmm. I don't recall who all talks about this, but one of my favorite concepts about personal growth that especially often comes about because of these experiences is the idea of corrective experiences. So as an example, we played with a person last year, a single male, and this person was, again, I would say, not our tribe, wasn't somebody we would necessarily connect with on a deeper level elsewhere. But this was early on in our thing, and she was just experimenting and exploring, and I was, gung-ho behind her for it. But I kept expressing how I was really surprised that she was interested in this particular guy. By the time we got home from that trip, she was going through some emotions, and she finally came out rather tearfully saying she was feeling a lot of shame about it. She kept feeling shame when I would keep saying, that, it really surprised me. Now, I kept saying it in a playful, like, man, it really surprised me, my usual way. But what it was doing was triggering an experience from the past where she was made to feel ashamed for a person she chose to be with. And so it gave me the opportunity, and this is the perfect example. I'm codependent as hell. I do not want her to feel sad. And when people are like that, it's real easy to feel defensive, to feel like you're telling me I hurt you when I was innocent, when it was like, no, I said something, you could almost say carelessly, certainly innocently, but not realizing that this was a sensitive subject for her. So I now had this opportunity to, for one, just hug the hell out of her and reassure her that she had nothing to feel ashamed of. I certainly didn't want her to feel ashamed of it. And that at the same time, I'll be more sensitive and more careful how so again, it's one of those perfect examples of she did something she'd never done before, which was dig around inside, find out what she was feeling, and then be vulnerable and tell me about it. And then I improved by being patient, hearing it and not taking it personally, not being defensive, and then just reassuring her that, nope, correcting that feeling. You played with this person because you wanted to in that moment. You were exploring things. You were experimenting. You didn't sign a contract with him. You didn't agree to marry him. And you had fun. And even if you didn't have fun, you don't do it again. It's like, that example is that I always like to talk about is when the first time we ever played with a single fella, as we were driving over to his house, we'd already kind of arranged we were going to kind of play with him. And as we were driving over to his house, I kept emphasizing, I don't want you to think about me and what I'm comfortable with tonight. Because we had already come to our one rule from the beginning has just been condoms for penetration. Beyond that, we've just figured we'll see how things unfold. I already knew I had a nuclear case of compersion. And so, of course, a word I've learned in the last 2 years. And but I also knew going into this situation that we don't know how we're going to feel until it happens. So I knew, I might become uncomfortable with something. But I told her, the thing is, as long as you're safe, that's the only thing that's a game changer. Beyond that, if I see something I'm uncomfortable with, we'll talk about it tomorrow. It's not anything that has to. So I wanted her to just focus on her own experience. And I just think that's such a valuable thing. Figure out what your rules are and such, but then just know if something happens you don't like, it doesn't mean everything has to come to a screeching halt. I mean, if you really wanted to, then it does need to. Mm-hmm. But if you feel like you can, we'll just deal with this tomorrow. It'll be okay. Our heads aren't going to fall off because we didn't deal with it till tomorrow. And fortunately, in my case, the thing that I had not ever really thought about when I would fantasize about seeing her with someone was the post-coital cuddling, just that cuddling and the caressing and stuff afterwards. And I mean, I just melted. I just was like, I just can't get any more of this. This is amazing. And it was just that feeling of knowing that she felt safe, just sort of, resorting to those natural impulses that we have, because I was kind of separate from them in that moment. And so they were just sort of snuggled up together and just doing the things that we do. And so I just felt amazing knowing that she knew I trusted and that she was safe to do this. And admittedly, the other part of it being just the compersion of knowing she's feeling good, and that made me feel good. But one of the things I've said often is, since getting into this journey, is I've developed a love affair with humanity. And so even seeing him, I mean, I like this guy. So knowing he's having a good time makes me just, I just get all like, man, everybody's so happy. And, and so to get to the one point that I keep not quite introducing, of course, once I started, really getting into all of this, I did start thinking, how can I integrate this new passion I have for this way of living with my creative passions, especially my number one passion being film. I'm also a painter. I'll have to send you a link to, I just finished a commissioned painting for one of our fellow lifestyle folks.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And
this is you just did a perfect transition, by the way, because I wanted to ask you, I know everything else we've been talking about, we could talk about for hours and hours and hours. Yes. And so we definitely want to hear more about the film. So thank you for naturally taking us that way.
Yeah. And I want to make one comment in there, though, that I think the lessons that you two gleaned from all of those experiences are amazing. I mean, there's just one piece that I just wanted to, for anybody who's maybe brand new, never done this, you made the comment about, well, hey, I just want you to enjoy tonight. Even if I get triggered or whatever, we can talk about it tomorrow. I think that's an amazing approach. I just want somebody listening to not walk away feeling that they could not stop
Right.
something in the moment if they were feeling it. And for me,
it's important to
well, my 2 cents on that is talk to your partner about what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go to Jane and say, hey, I most likely you're not going to hear about it until the next day. I don't want you to worry, but if something goes too far, here's how I would like to let you know what would feel good to you. How can we do that so you're not freaking out the whole time wondering, did I do something? Am I going to hear about it tomorrow? Did I do something? Am I hear about it tomorrow? Because that could mess with somebody too.
Well, that could cause a lot of anxiety in the evening of like, I'm so afraid I'm going to do something and I'm not going to know until tomorrow.
Yeah. Right. And so that, I think that's just where the conversation, right, comes in, whether it's on the drive over, the day before over, and the drive over. Please, the more you can talk about those things and have an idea of, okay, if this happens, we do this. If that happens, we do this. And also know that in the heat of the moment, you're probably going to forget one of those things you said, and you're going to still stumble. And then what do we do there? We have a plan for when we fuck up the plan.
Right. And we don't have to panic, and we don't have to, Yeah. And I think
at the end of the day, we're all human and we all have emotion, and we do the best we can.
We're going to make mistakes, and we're going to change our mind. Yeah. Again, we're going to change our mind with something we might think we were comfortable with. We might find we're not comfortable with, and that's okay. And I mean, my approach with her that night is very specific to my experience, which is, up till that point, I had already told her many times that, and this is, I think, such an important message for couples to think about, which is, I already knew at that point, because our relationship, before we even started all of this, our relationship was the best relationship either of us had ever experienced. That was before all of this. And so now here it was just growing. I mean, we are literally every weekend, Sunday night, we toast to, well, another amazing weekend. I mean, it's like we don't know how to have a bad time together. Even if we just sit at home picking up dog poop in the backyard all day, we just adore being around each other. And one of the things that I've been emphasizing to her for a long time is, it's not just that I have this compersion and this erotic enjoyment of the idea of her being with another man. At this point, I was already like, I wouldn't care if he had a bigger appendage than me. He's younger than me. He's more well-built than me. He can do things I can't do. He drives my dream car. He's won 3 Oscars. He lives in a huge mansion. If you take anything he can do, even something that I have insecurities about, none of that, it's unfathomable to me that any of that could somehow take away from our relationship. It's like, what do I think, like some 32-year-old well-hung guy is going to have sex with her and she's going to suddenly fall in love with him? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, well, no, she's still going to love me even in the middle of that happening, because, we've established repeatedly that anything we do with other people is just an embellishment to our relationship. It's something that's happening because of our relationship. So fortunately, because in my case, I felt, and again, this is where the autism can benefit me, because those switches are all flipped to on. Mm-hmm. And so I can't even understand the risk that she might fall in love. It's like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Now, could it happen? Sure. But I don't feel that way. And I'll just enjoy my oblivion. Thank you.
Well, the catch there is, in order for her to fall in love with somebody else, she doesn't have to fall out of love with you, right? And so
it doesn't have to take away from me.
Right, yeah. Right. Absolutely. So she could fall in love with 100 people. That doesn't mean that she's not going to love picking up dog poop in the backyard with you on a Sunday afternoon.
Exactly.
And I think that's the shift that is so hard to make.
Yeah.
Because of what we're told, what we're taught, what we see around us is
the finite source of love.
Yeah. If I fall in love with person A, that means I had to fall out of love with person B.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to. Does it happen? Sure, it does happen. But it doesn't have to happen. And that's really more a reflection of your relationship with that person, not a reflection of their relationship with person B.
Yep. Absolutely. And
so you're making a movie, I heard.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. So so I kept thinking, how can I merge these passions, my love of filmmaking and my new passion for this way of living and these types of relationships. And I come from a narrative film background. I was a cinematographer for years, worked on 27 feature films as the director of photography, did countless music videos and, all kinds of stuff. The last couple of years now, I've been getting hired often as a production designer. I've written, I'm a screenwriter, won a couple awards. I've directed and produced a couple of feature films. So that's where my mind is always at. And we were at PCAP last summer in Palm Springs, and a conversation with another podcaster, actually, it came up that I do filmmaking, and he was saying, "Oh, I've got some ideas." And, he was thinking about a comedy, like TV series, that's centered on the lifestyle. And when we left PCAP, we were just driving down the highway from Palm Springs back home to Arizona. And I was reflecting back on that conversation, and suddenly the idea hit me of, wait a minute, why am I not doing a documentary about the lifestyle? And specifically, and this ties back to what we were talking about a couple days ago at the beginning of this podcast. I hope you don't have to split it into two parts, but
we won't.
But I think that my approach to this is kind of unique in that, like we talked about earlier, the sex got my attention, but it was the relationship stuff that I was like, oh no, I must have that. I mean, I had a clear vision. Like, I literally was driving down the road and I could see the future. I could see our relationship. And that's how my brain tends to work. It's just like, I can see this documentary. That's why it's getting done. I built an entire house. My son-in-law and I did 90% of the labor, built an entire house. And I'm not a construction guy, but I could see it, and I had a vision, and I saw it through. I've made movies. I mean, I'm not saying all that to brag. I'm just saying when I see something, I can get there, and that's how
I'm as familiar with that process. She married that process.
Yep.
Yeah, I did.
Yep.
It's made her a bit gun shy of saying, "Yeah, that's a good idea."
See what I mean? Oh yeah. No, Jane's not gun shy. She's always going. She'll throw an idea out there because she knows if I latch onto it, I'm going to make it happen, and that way she can just cool. He's going to build us a new deck now. So I thought I have a unique approach to trying to show people that there's more to this than they realize, and that there are these things that you don't have to have sex with other people to benefit, to have these amazing experiences. And it just, I don't know how else to put it other than it was like lightning strike. It's just, oh my God, 2 + 2 = 4. And I need to make this documentary. There's just no question about it. And, I would say it was within a few weeks that I probably reached out to you guys. And I've just been busy ever since. We've interviewed, I keep forgetting to add it up now, but a few dozen people. And we've got probably another about somewhere between a dozen and 20 people lined up between now and April to still interview. And there's so many more I want to, but I'm running out of money, or I'm already out of money. I should say I'm running out of credit card. What do you call it? No, I have the balance. Available credit. There we go. I'm running out of available credit. And so, I have to at some point stop. And so I started the documentary. It's now, the title of it is Open, A Journey Through Love. And the reason we called it that was, open, meaning just the broadest spectrum of opening a relationship. Again, from DTF swingers to bulls and cuckolds and kink people to polyamory to social swingers, because they're all different iterations, but they all have the potential, and most do in one way or another benefit from the same sorts of things that challenge old beliefs and old attachments and that sort of thing. And the focus of the documentary is to destigmatize ethical non-monogamy and examine the profound positive effects it can have on individuals and relationships. And I think there's a few important components to that. For one, I keep saying profound positive effects it can have on individuals and relationships. This is not for everyone. This is not this documentary is not about saying everybody should be a swinger, or it's not about that at all. Not everybody should be doing this. It's not for everybody's preference. It's not it's not something you should aspire to. It's just something to understand a little more, maybe judge a little less, and maybe consider. Maybe it would do something for you.
It's an option that's out there.
Yeah, and it's not better than monogamy. It's not less than monogamy. It's just another way of relating. And one of the things that's been so enjoyable is because I'm convinced that there's more than enough content surrounding this to just do an entire series of issues. And so by the time this is done, I'm going to have 100 hours approximately. I'm based on current footage counts, we'll have about 100 hours of footage to distill down to an hour and a half. And dozens of those hours are about other subjects. Because for one, I just enjoy doing exactly what we're doing right now. I mean, every one of these conversations has been, I'm going to talk to you about a few things. And then we're just sitting there for an hour and a half. And we're talking about all kinds of things because, I would love to see that this might lead to us doing a series. And now I can use some of these other things. One of the things that's coming up is I'm doing some interviews with some people from the Black community. And this won't be for this documentary, but among the things for this documentary, I want to talk to them about race play and negative race play and what role does race play in your experience. And that's a very provocative subject because there are people that feel very strongly and very opposite about all of that. And I would just like to learn a little more about that and hopefully, let people express their views on that. And but again, that would be for a separate episode. But I'm going to sit there and have that conversation because I get to learn. And even if it's not going to go in the documentary, I get to hear about people and hear their stories. So it's been an incredible experience. Like I said, we've interviewed several podcasters, casual swinger, accidental swingers. Let's see. Who else is there? Well, of course, we're going to talk to you guys in a couple of weeks here. Gosh, I thought there was another one. And then Naughty Gym are a couple out of Alabama that have a commercial gym, but then they also have a sex positive LGBTQ plus friendly online gym. And they do, events like they're doing a takeover at Hito next January. And we're going to be going down there to film some of their conference. It's a health and wellness thing that they're doing. And it won't be for the documentary. It's for something for them. But and then counselors, therapists, Catherine from Expansive Connection. Pretty soon we're going to be talking to Libby Sinback and Jessica Fern, author of Polysecure, at the same conference that you guys are coming to in Tucson. And and then we talked to, just a couple of weeks ago, we were in Colorado and met with Christopher Ryan, author of Sex at Dawn, a book that challenges, historical wisdom about man's relationship with sex and monogamy. Fascinating conversation. Gosh, who was the other one? Well, anyway.
No, I think it's amazing, and there's so many people, and I know when you reached out, we were like, here's a list of like 30. Go nuts. We can introduce you, whatever. And so it's been amazing to see it come together.
Pam and Jim.
Yep. And then a little coincidental one we found out once we started all this was, so Jane's son's doctor is in a polytriad, I guess you would say. she's got a husband and a girlfriend, and they all live together. And so we're going to be interviewing them for the documentary. And they just live right up the street here. And we wouldn't have even known, but Jane was riding with her up to Tucson when Roe v. Wade, when it first leaked, not when it happened, but when it leaked last year, that it was, looks like it was going to happen. There were protests all over the place. So Jane went up to Tucson to participate in the one up there. I was out of town, but flying into Tucson, and she went up with her son's doctor and her girlfriend, and she just sort of awkwardly was like, "Well, so let me introduce you," and that was when she learned, I'm in a poly relationship, and Jane was like, "Oh, well, Rod's doing a documentary. Are you guys willing to be interviewed?" And she said, "Yeah." So they're in a closed poly group, whereas we're talking to another polyquad that are an open polyquad. There's just so many different flavors of this. And I can't help but just always feel excited by that, just excited that there are so many different people experiencing and enjoying such different versions of things. I think for me, maybe some of it is, again, with the autism having given me throughout my life such struggles with black and white thinking. I think it's just been exceedingly liberating to get to experience more of the gray that is life, So yeah, been working on the documentary for months now. Oh, I've been cataloging, which is fun because I'm sitting here watching the interviews I've already done and like separating it into clips about different subjects. And as I'm watching it, I get to experience all those warm fuzzies again of the conversation. And hoping to the plan is to be able to assemble a 3 to 5 minute preview of sorts sometime in March, that will be on the website. The website is www.openjourneylove.com. And so I'll put the preview up on there. My goal is to finish the film, a feature-length documentary, by the fall. That's about as close as I'm narrowing it right now. One of the things about documentaries, of course, is that they kind of write themselves. So now it's up to me to just go through all this footage and start to try to assemble something from it. And that could take quite a while. I mean, it's going to take quite a while.
It could take a long time. Yeah.
Well, in the fall in Arizona lasts from the end of summer till the beginning of summer. So there's really,
exactly.
You've given yourself a hell of a window. So
exactly.
I love it. Smart.
Yeah. I love the work that you're doing. And I wanted, if people are interested in supporting your work or learning more or potentially being interviewed, how could they get involved, and what's the best way to support?
So the few things, the website should be certainly online by the time people are hearing this podcast. And that's www.openjourneylove.com. No spaces or periods, just openjourneylove.com.
Yep. Links will be in the show notes.
Yep.
We're covered. We got you covered.
Yep. On the website, there will be a form to sign up for a newsletter. I'll put something out probably no more than every 2 weeks, and hopefully no less than every 4 weeks, just keeping people updated with where the project's at. And of course, the disclaimer of nobody's emails will be distributed or sold anywhere. There will also be, of course, a contact form on the website. There should be the preview there. There's going to be little snippets, because one of the things I have is, again, tons of content that's not necessarily going to be in the documentary. And so my plan is we also have a YouTube channel that is also under Open Journey Love. And I'm going to start putting up shorter clips of things, maybe some little snippet that's just not going to go in the documentary, but it's still interesting to hear about. So we have the YouTube channel that we're launching now. We're on Twitter. I'd already set up a Twitter account before the documentary, and it's called Swing Traverts, because we consider ourselves introverted swingers. So it's Swing Traverts.
all of your socials will be in the show. Like we will make sure people can find you.
Yeah.
And don't. Yeah.
And if people, I guess maybe the question is, I know this will air in a little bit, in a few weeks, but when it does, if people want to be involved in the film, are you still looking for people, or do you have that? Is that pretty much done for now?
It's a little of both, because I absolutely want to keep hearing from people. I'm definitely exhausted and overwhelmed, and have enough interviews already lined up. But I will keep saying, I'm convinced there's so much more to tell. And so I want people to reach out, because even if it's something I can't pull together in time for this film,
There might be more in the future.
I want to keep this going. I want to keep the dialogue going, and to the point that I'm even resorting to doing some Zoom interviews now. There's a woman in British Columbia where I would love to visit, but I don't want to drive all the way to British Columbia for it right now, that conducted a study on how stigma around the ethical non-monogamy community impacts mental health. You know, I mean, all of us that are dealing, gosh, one of the things that really impacted me was, one of the things that can be disappointing is, again, you don't find many people of color. I mean, this has been a very white project thus far, and I've been like trying to find people of color. Well, I finally have some now that we can talk to. But one person I talked to, a therapist who's African American, talked about how, you know, as Black people, we already feel marginalized. We already feel like our existences are somewhat risky. So yeah, it's really difficult to want to take a further risk by engaging in more controversial behavior, and certainly being open about it. One of the subtopics that will be in the documentary is I'm having conversations with people about being outed. You know, who knows and how, because some of them have had, of course, some pretty unpleasant experiences with being outed. And, you know, I've got so far 3 people that I'm interviewing for the documentary, one I already have and 2 that are coming up, where they are still going to be anonymous. So like one person is ultimately going to be a cartoon character in the documentary. And the other 2, I've got some other plans for. I didn't want to do the silhouetted, like they're a suspect or something, or they're in witness protection. And so I wanted to do something playful, because I want this to feel playful and fun and uplifting. And, you know, I just find a tragic irony in the idea that, let's say, a school administrator can cheat on his or her spouse and they'll get a slap on the wrist. But if consensually they choose to be in an E&M lifestyle, they can lose their career. They can lose their lives, you know, their comfort, their income, and all this stuff. It's like, whoa, what kind of sense does that make? And so I can't remember where all I was going with that, but
we're on board with that for sure. And I'm just excited. I'm excited about this conversation we had. Like, it's amazing. Everything we talked about. I'm excited for the film. I'm excited to be in the film, right? And
that's right.
We're doing this interview beginning of February. We're going to meet you in a couple of weeks and be in it, and it's releasing sometime end of March. So
the interview.
This is all the inner workings. Yeah. So I'm just excited to see it all come together and to be a part of it, and to hopefully open people's eyes in a way that maybe hasn't happened before. So thank you for doing that work.
Absolutely.
To take this project by the horns and drive it as far as you have, and is amazing. And I just hope too, right? You know, I'm gonna ask, like, are there ways people can get involved? And hell, if there's people out there who've got big checkbooks and they want to help, you know, maybe you can't be in the film because you're too at risk, but you can support work
Absolutely.
like this. Like, this type of work doesn't get mainstream funding,
right?
And, you know, podcasts like ours, we don't get tons of advertisers. So we often rely on the community to lift the community. And so please reach out to Roderick or to us or anybody, and we will help facilitate that.
Yeah, for one, I was going to say, I think the time is perfect. This could be, again, my own naive optimism, but I feel like things are changing. I feel like the world is changing. I feel like the lifestyle community is changing. I mean, again, some of these tensions that we were talking about, I feel like those things are starting to dissipate a little. And so I feel like the world is ready to hear something new about this kind of thing. And for two, I pretty much resolved about a month ago that I'm going to have to launch an Indiegogo campaign to help support this. Because, man, it's definitely breaking the bank, all this travel and so on. So if it's possible, it's very possible that by the time we're ready to release this, that I may have an Indiegogo link, which is, a crowdfunding thing.
If there is, we will make sure everybody knows about it.
So and one of the things I'll be doing, I'll like I said, I'll send you guys a link to it. But one of the things I'll be doing is I am a photorealist painter, and I've been starting to get commissions. So I did a painting of Jane from a boudoir photograph that we did, had done a year and a half ago. And did I send you guys the link to that?
No.
Oh, I'll have to send you that one. So I did this painting of Jane, and not one that I can share on Facebook, because it's a boudoir photograph, and you can see nipples, and that's against the law. And so that led me to now some of our more well-off lifestyle friends have commissioned me to do some paintings. And so that's, for instance, going to be one of the higher end incentives is that I'll do a painting.
I love it.
And I'll send you the links so you can see what those look like. And those, when I say links, what I mean is one of the fun things I do is while I'm painting, because these paintings take me hours and hours over the course of several days, is I shoot time lapse of the painting in progress. And so I have these time lapse videos of these two paintings I've done so far. And so I'll send you those so you can see what they look like.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you again, Roderick, for coming on and sharing everything you did, for your work, for your enthusiasm. It's infectious, and we've loved our conversation today. So we will say goodbye for now, but spoiler alert, we've already discussed doing a behind the scenes of the film podcast later. So this won't be the last time people hear from you, and we just can't wait to see what comes out of this.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. No, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you for your time.
And we're back. Thank you. Thank you so much, Roderick, for coming on and sharing your story, and for the amazing work that you're doing out there, especially with this documentary. We're so excited to be part of it, and we can't wait to see what comes together.
Yeah, again, thank you, Roderick, for your work and for including us in your work.
Yes.
We're super grateful, and it's been a fun process, and we can't wait to see what pops out the other side.
Yes.
And so a quick reminder, there are links in the show notes to check out the website, to check out the Indiegogo campaign.
The
preview. And in the show notes, there is a link to check out the time lapse that Roderick talks about of his painting of Jane.
Yes.
Which is
beautiful.
Incredibly beautiful and stunning. And check it out.
Yes.
Highly recommend it.
Please do. Also, a couple of quick reminders. We have the Dating Your Way workshop tomorrow. That's March 30th. We have Southwest Love Fest coming up April 14th to the 16th in Tucson, Arizona. And we have our next virtual meet and greet coming up April 21st. And I think that's it.
Yep. To find links to all of those, again, our website is normalizingnonmonogamy.com. You can click on the events tab, or there are links directly in the podcast player show notes.
Yes. Next week, we have an interview with Phoenix. Another badass interview. Also, speaking of community, Phoenix is a community member. They are.
So if you would like to check out some of the awesomeness that our community gifts the world, or maybe the awesomeness that our community is gifted.
Yeah.
That's probably a more accurate statement.
Probably.
Maybe it's a little bit of both.
I think, there's probably a little bit of both there.
Anyway, come back next week. We would love to see you, and we'll see you tomorrow at the Dating Your Way workshop. Have a wonderful week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.